And then,
Okay.
you know, Marcia said, I want to move on.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Planning and zoning commission for city of Richmond. Join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just, last week I worked meet them all.
Okay, first order of business is call to the community. Do we have, Mary, did you want to talk at all? Are you sure? You're our representative of the community for the night, so. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes.
And
Do
then-
we have a-
I move that we approve the minutes of December 12th.
Okay,
Was it, I'm sorry, December 12th?
yeah, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
A second to approve the minutes. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Nays, none. Moving on, we need to, from our body, we need to nominate or elect, I guess, actually, one of our members to go as the representative to DRB. Brian Connor was doing that, but has opted that he doesn't want to do that particular job anymore. So it falls on this group. I am already a member of both here and Board of
Adjustment deal.
So I'm out of the contention or it'll really foul it. So in any event, we have four of you left, so.
Can't twist your.
Can I nominate Andrew?
You certainly could nominate me. I'm going to respectfully decline. I am running for city council.
Oh, that's
Oh.
great.
So if I do receive a position there, I will have to step down from this board. But that wouldn't be till December. So, but I'm going to respectfully decline. So I'm not stepping down from two positions at once.
Okay.
Okay.
What is this?
Nominate Deborah?
No, she said no.
Can I nominate Bob?
We don't have any other choices.
I
Well,
think you'd be great.
I would like to point out that for many years, it took me 2 years of Bob coming to the DRB meetings regularly to finally saying, who is that guy? So I would have, he has more experience than almost any of us. Well, maybe not all of us, but lots of experience on DRB. So is that
Plus-
nod, you're willing to do it?
Yes, I will. I was hoping that either one of the ladies would step up because they both have a lot of knowledge and a lot of, but, realize that I've gone in the summer, but the nice thing is being able to get on electronically and keep up with the meetings. And they seem to have more meetings than we do in person.
Okay, well, I will make the motion that we accept Mr. Dare's volunteering to go to DRB as our representative. Is there a second?
A second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Although all those in favor of electing Bob Dare as our DRB representative, say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays.
I'm abstaining.
Bob abstain. Okay, moving on. The next thing is establishment of a historic preservation program. Don Frick is our planner, so go ahead. Don.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So last month, we were approached by the State Historic Preservation Office, also known as SHPO, about, hey, what's going on in the Still Park regarding historic preservation? And so I was there, the city manager was there. We had a couple council members, other members of the community. Mary was there, members of the Historical Society, and it was, there's some community support for, hey, we're an established city. We have a great neighborhoods, some historic properties, older houses, a lot of heritage up on the hilltop. Hey, what's Litchfield Park doing with historic preservation? So that meeting was last month. The acronym is SHPO. That's what I'm gonna call it tonight. in your packet, there's some history on how the State Parks Board oversees historic preservation efforts in Arizona. And SHPO has basically asked Litchfield Park is, well, one, you're not a community known as what's called a certified local government or CLG. And I'll get into that in just a moment. We talked philosophically about, you know, the history of the city, Goodyear Farms, Paul Litchfield, how the city became a city incorporated in 1987. I went into the meeting and talked about, we have 19 zoning districts in our zoning code. We even have a historic preservation overlay district as one of the 19 in HPOD. But if you look at a zoning map, we have no properties that are zoned with that overlay district. I pulled an excerpt from, this is a lot of information to read. This is an excerpt from section 9 of the zoning code, and I highlighted, these are the 19 zoning districts that most of P and Z would be familiar with. Lo and behold, we do have the historic preservation overlay district, but that's about it. There's no really mention elsewhere in the zoning code about historic preservation. Unlike other zoning codes that I've worked on across Arizona, mostly in Glendale, some in Phoenix. Obviously here, I've done work in a couple of different counties in Arizona. Most zoning codes would have a historic preservation district or section. We don't have that in our ordinance. So we talked a little bit about that. Then getting back to, well, gee, why isn't Litchfield Park a certified local government? CLG communities are, so what is a certified local government? So becoming a CLG allows, and I'll pass out an application form. Yep, extra copies there. This is an application form that SHPO provided, and they gave each one of us. Let me kind of delve back into the meeting. So at the, we're short one. I'm sorry, go back to one. Thank you. So at the meeting, we met with a very enthusiastic person from SHPO. She handed out these notebooks. And Ariana Urban, she's with the State Historic Preservation Office. And basically, hey, I'm all over the state, driving around to different counties in Arizona, different cities, working on expanding historic preservation efforts in Arizona. Obviously, back in 2012, we celebrated a centennial as a state. So Ariana, she's basically one person trying to run the SHPO for, among other things, there's other staff that she works with based out of Phoenix, but she's asked if Litchfield Park would like to consider to become a certified local government. This is the application form, and there's some things, and I'll kind of touch on it, and it lays a big part of the requirements on Planning and Zoning Commission is because we don't have a historic preservation ordinance, if you will, although we have kind of a backbone of it with the overlay district, we would want to create a zoning category or a zoning section in our ordinance that would outline what historic preservation is in Litchfield Park. I report to the city manager, Matthew Williams. Matthew was very enthusiastic on, yeah, we can explore this further. I told the group I would be coming forward to ask P&Z, present this information to you, and see if there's a appetite by P and Z to work further on this. So what's the benefit of becoming a CLG organization? So there's two big things. One is it allows, if you're a CLG, then you can, as a member agency, you can apply for grants from SHPO. If you're not a CLG community, then you're not eligible to apply for any. It's basically pass-through money from the federal government that goes from the federal government down to Arizona State Historic Preservation Office through state parks, and then they do pass-through funds. We do have some properties that we could apply for grants in the future if we became a CLG. The other thing, becoming a CLG is that we would have the responsibility to review and approve future requests to potentially have properties listed on what's called the National Register of Historic Places. In my Glendale years, when I was planning director, over the course of time, I was also the historic preservation officer. And back in the good times, Glendale actually had a full-time designated person for historic preservation effort. And then through recession, 9/11, other shifts in priorities in Glendale, the program was kind of minimized, if you will. But in 1995, I was on staff with Glendale when Glendale became a CLG, which it's almost 30 years ago. But you think of how old some of the West Valley cities are: Avondale, Goodyear, Litchfield Park, Glendale, Buckeye. It makes sense for, it doesn't cost anything to become a CLG community. And so our recommendation is that we take the first steps, first talk to P and Z and see your thoughts on historic preservation. And if this is something that you would like us to continue to pursue and discuss out in the community. Besides the mention of the 19 zoning districts, we don't really have a lot else in the zoning code, surprisingly. What we would be doing is, if P and Z is interested, is we would, and in the booklet, I can pass this around. I didn't make copies of everything, but SHPO has provided examples of ordinances for like Gila Bend, Florence. I believe Bisbee is in there, where we wouldn't be recreating the wheel. We would be basically looking at Peoria is in there as just examples on what other communities in Arizona have done historic preservation. So I don't think there would be really any cost to the city to pursue the CLG application, but our first step would be to gain community support, and that's what we're asking for from tonight. So we're basically looking for that input from you. You may have thoughts, you all live here, on like what your vision is for historic preservation, some ideas on some, we have an older housing product, kind of a mix. We don't have any properties on the National Register. That could be on some next steps, but we're really looking for your input. And hopefully at the end of the night or end of this discussion, get a consensus from P and Z. Is this something you want us to work on and pursue a text amendment to add that historic preservation section to the zoning code? So I'll open it up to P and Z on any thoughts, questions that you may have.
Do you want a motion on the floor and then discussion, or just a
Let's just
discussion?
go ahead.
I have some comments about
Sure.
this. Well, impact would be one thing. Residences perhaps excluded from this unless there is really something very significant, but I've managed commercial properties before and church properties and other where there's been historic preservation, and it ties the hands of the owners. It it can stop for years, you know, while there's hearings and everything else, and it can be very costly. So I'm not against it. I love preserving history, but I think it gets back to on historic preservation. You know, is there a process to be defined? And like you said, can we look at language in other jurisdictions and see if we can utilize that language, make that work rather than starting from scratch? So get language from others, you know, and just define the process. Who can initiate who can name a property for, nominate one for historic preservation? You know, should an inventory be done first of potential properties? Should we be working with the P.W. Litchfield, I'll get a Heritage Center, I know the Historic Society, you know, because they already have the pulse on, I think, a lot of buildings that could be considered historical, certainly better than I would. Staff time to put all of this together. There's a cost impact there. So timing, what if somebody nominates one? How long does it take? What, you know, so timing, resources, money, initial inventory, adding to it, guidelines, you said impact restrictions, and you know, 100-year-old projects or whatever, and he would be, you know, where do you draw the line? Or is it just something that's new but significant, you know, just really defining that. And then also just from a clerical point of view, I think that on section 9, it says the city of Litchfield Park, it says is hereby divided into 18 districts. And when you count them, there's 19. So that may need to be changed. Anyway, those were just some of my notes from looking at that.
Very good.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm just failing to understand like the benefits, like what's the overall benefit for us to do this?
Through the chair commission, I think the benefit, my perspective is it's a point of pride to be an older community with that history of older properties. We already have it now, whether we have a historic preservation section in the zoning code with the wigwam, the history that's there. You go into some of the restaurants downtown and just some of the old imagery and photos. The benefit would be, as I pointed out on the CLG, is going after grant funding. Bronze plaque program is something that we could explore, adding, you know, plaques to certain properties that tells the story of the history of the city and things of that nature.
Okay, because I remember like when I lived in Buckeye, they were doing this with Buckeye and they wanted to get funds because there was like old dilapidated buildings.
Right.
I guess for here, I mean, I think there's already this feeling like inside the walls is the historic district for where we live. But I don't like, there really aren't like anything that's going to be developed at this point is going to be ground up. So I guess I don't like personally have like some issue with it. I don't understand how it really is going to impact or benefit any building in the, you know, in this area.
Yeah, I agree with, and Commissioner Lawrence also had the concerns. I recently, for a client, we've started looking at some of this. And you really have to get into distinctions in the sense, just because something is really old, doesn't mean it's historic. It's just a really old building that really needs to be removed. Or you get some that are really kind of nifty, but you're talking a 25-year history, which really isn't, you know, historic. And I think just in talking, we've talked about what I would have thought of the things. You have the Litchfield House and grounds and Aunt Mary's house. You have the wigwam, the old, what was the original Catholic church. I think they're using for storage now across the street from the wigwam and the church at Litchfield Park. And then you look back, and the one that always, you get into a thing about sometimes there's something that locally is considered pretty nifty, but when you really look at it, and I'm talking about the Scout Hut, at the end of the day, the Scout Hut is a cinder block building that over the last 70 or 80 years, there's, you know, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have gone there. But, you know, I don't know whatever was decided, but I hear people talking about moving it. And I'm going, it's a cinder block house. Wouldn't it be easier to take a few, have a little memorial and just build it with new cinder block, you know, across the street? And I know Buckeye, we represented them years ago, and somebody was trying to move an old historic house. I think they got about a quarter of a mile before it started falling apart. When I was in law school down at the U of A, they tried moving an old historic house right off campus, and they got about a block there before it started to. So when you talk about moving buildings or whatever, and then sometimes you get a lot of ill will between developers that are just that are on a strict timeline. You need to get something done within, make it, you know, reasonable, where it gets held up, and then you get into these other problems. But I'm kind of with Brian. I was counting when I saw that. I thought, I don't think of us necessarily in those terms. Now, if there's grant money, when you started talking about grant money, I said, okay, now you have my interest. But what kind of grant money and what would the program be and how involved would it be? So anyway, I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I'm just like Brian, I'm kind of struggling with, you know, we're landlocked basically. We only have so much, you know, and you know, the old, you know, the restaurants, you know, downtown with all, you know, the walls, it's kind of.
Yeah, the Adobe back.
Yeah, my undergraduate degree was in history, so I'm kind of a history nerd, so I'm all in favor of all of that, but it doesn't, just because it's old doesn't necessarily mean it's worth saving, is what I'm saying. Then there may be others that really are worth putting on. Sometimes they turn into money pits too, is trying to round up enough money to get it going and take a long time. Well, anyway, any other comments?
Is there a way that we could not do this, but somehow recognize historic buildings in Litchfield Park that doesn't require any kind of zoning amendment or adaptation? That, I mean, I'm sure that there's grant money out there somewhere that we could get to restore, like the original Catholic Church on the corner of Neolin and and Wigwam. And I mean, I think that there's maybe other things that we could do to recognize some of these buildings, you know, without, because I mean, this part of Litchfield Park, like you were saying, I mean, everything is pretty old. And not all these buildings warrant a historical recognition. So I don't know.
Does it have to be in the historic preservation district in order to qualify for a grant? And if so, can we restrict the historic preservation district to only La Loma? Because we can't do anything with that anyway, because it's in the documents that, as it was deeded to the city. That's our historic preservation district, and that opens the city up to apply for grants so that we can maintain the hill and turn it actually into a place that we can use, because we currently don't have the funds for that.
Right.
But if we just limit it to up there, then it doesn't change the way the city functions today. It doesn't put any onerous restrictions on any other buildings in the city. So does it have to be within the historic preservation district, overlay district? And can we somehow here limit that to La Loma?
Yeah, excellent input from all of you. So here's kind of what I was thinking, just based on my experience here and elsewhere, is that if the commission was comfortable in doing so, staff would do a little bit more research, come back and present those findings to you. You wouldn't be voting on anything the next time we come back. Because we don't have a historic district or a historic preservation section in our zoning code, like your comment, Andrew, on the historic district, we don't have any historic districts. We have the overlay district in the zoning code, but we don't have a geographic area, Brian mentions, inside the walls, and Deb mentioned some of the steps that is necessary to add a property or to create a historic district. My Glendale experience, Glendale has 10 historic districts. I think when I was there, I got 3 or 4 districts approved through the federal government, through state parks, and then through the national program. And so that's a very tedious, lengthy, and frankly, it requires a architectural historian to be brought on. I don't see us doing that quite yet. That's probably 3 or 4 steps down the line, but if the P and Z is comfortable with it, we would do a little bit more research, come back when that research is concluded, present that to you to see if you're interested in at least adding something, a new section of the zoning code to take that initial baby step. It would not be adding or creating historic districts, because that's a whole nother process where we would have to engage an architectural historian, and we don't have anybody on staff that could do that, so it'd be a consultant. And David kind of touched on some of his experience, and Brian did as well in Buckeyes. So I don't know if that helps or not with.
A question, does the city ever engage task force where you could have like a business owner, an architect, whatever, just to get, 4 or 5 people, for instance, together as a task force to consider this from maybe another point of view, and
We
look
could
at
do that.
impact?
We kind of did that last month when Mary and several members of the Heritage Center were there, staff, a couple of council members. But yeah, we would want to engage the business community, and I always kind of learned that it's not having the staff, in this case me, pushing the city into the community. I think it has to come from the community and groundswell up in terms of support. So that is something that we could explore.
Deb, are you interested in being part of that?
No.
Because you brought it up, so I was wondering if maybe.
No, I mean, I've been involved in that before, and I agree that, you don't want to like blindside the residents and say all of a sudden, what do you mean? It means I can't add on my house, I can't do this, misinformation or concerns arise. And I think it's, if you could say, that we have task force, we invited some members from the community to be part of this, and you say, we'd like to get somebody from the Heritage Society, somebody from with an architectural background, a business owner in the city, and you just, open it up to get someone on it. They come back to planning zoning with a recommendation that could go up to the city council. Anyway, it would just give us maybe a little bit more perspective and all, but.
Any other comments?
Only one other thing, when you talk about a new section, so right now it's section 9. So if you make a section 10, then all the numbering is changed. Whereas can you do, right now it's a section, that's 9.07. Can you keep that section and just expand?
Yeah, we would look at the sequencing of that, and so we could almost, I didn't print the entire zoning code, but maybe 9.08 or section 9 gets retitled.
Yeah.
We can play around with that.
Yeah, I just think, you're throwing everything off, and people who are familiar with certain sections of the zoning code, it could be confusing.
Okay.
If you're uncomfortable initiating the text amendment, I have enough to go on. I can go back, do a little bit more research, and come back to you with more information.
I think for me personally, would rather you did that. And
Okay.
but as part of that, and this is just me personally, I think it would be interesting to try to come up with something that is a local certification, if you were going to do it, that didn't involve having to go through the federal government and all those layers. Could there be, you mentioned, I have no idea what the bronze plaque program is, but I was thinking
Yeah.
If you did that and it was, the issuing party was the city council approving a particular business that had applied where they could, they could put that on the wall where it would not be restrictive, but would be a way to allow property owners to recognize what they have and share that. It just seems to me something like that. Maybe, and I might not get, I don't know how that would fare with grant money, but I think it might be easier than doing this. I mean, just, of course, on the other hand, that would mean Peter Mahoney would take up the entire block if he ever finds a way to get that one last piece of his deal.
But he doesn't own the building. He just.
No,
rents
he
it.
doesn't, so he
Yeah,
would be.
he just rents it, so it's the building owner that controls that.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, that was just, that popped into my head. I have not thought it out, but I know from what little I've looked at the whole historic thing, it looks really complicated. It looks like it takes a long time. And then once you get into it, it seemed to me you could easily end up being a hamster on the wheel, trying to escape from the wheel to, to get out of there. Whereas if there was something local that did some of the same things that would allow businesses to get some extra recognition, of some way that might be something the business community might have some interest in, or maybe not. But anyway,
Just think that to go through the process and have possible restrictions on development, what you can do with the outside of the building, sometimes what you can do with some ingress, egress and other issues. And attorney's fees and delays and timing to get a $1,500 plaque on the outside of your building, it's not really a reward, I think, yeah. And it's hard on those that own the property to go through this process. Hearings can be delayed. It could be a multi-year process.
I mean, so my lens does look at it like it's the utility of it is to revitalize areas, or am I off on that? Is that?
I think it's both. I think the lens that I would have is it's also establishing a bronze plaque program. Glendale has or had a very robust bronze plaque program. I know Buckeye, I've seen plaques in Buckeye, Phoenix, other travels that I've had across Flagstaff, Prescott, some of the older communities have a bronze plaque program. So it's a combination of things.
Okay.
Yeah, but if it's just based on age, then we're not old enough to really justify. We're talking, 100, 150, 200, 250-year-old projects and coming out of Chicago and burbs around Chicago. And, seeing that and knowing, so I personally think it may be worthwhile going to the next step and see what becomes uncovered and what the hidden nuances are. And then go for it.
Make a motion?
Sure.
Okay, I move that we ask the staff to prepare a text amendment establishing a historic preservation program for further study.
I'll second it.
okay, are you asking that staff prepare an ordinance to look at?
Study further a text amendment establishing a historic preservation district.
Okay, so they're not necessarily gonna.
No, not creating a
More
text.
information.
Yeah,
Just gathering more.
more
Further-
study, more information.
Further study.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, okay. All right, with that, we will move on to,
Yes.
moving on to the research survey proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had actually kind of forgotten about this. So you might remember at your December meeting, we had asked you, we had gotten an inquiry from a prior Planning and Zoning Commission member asking if the Planning and Zoning Commission would be interested in completing a anonymous survey to help him with his doctoral research, project. Frankly, 3 months, 2 months have passed. I kind of thought maybe the need of the doctoral student had already passed, but the commission that night was a little uncomfortable with participating in the survey. And so, you would ask questions like, is it really anonymous? Do we have to do this? There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm to participate. So to be respectful to the requester, we were bringing it back to see if this is something that you want to do on your own volition. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't complete the survey as a group. It would be in the comforts of your own home or office at your own behest.
I was uncomfortable with it last time and I'm uncomfortable with it now, seeing the questions and everything. And it's, great that he's got this project, but I just, it's not that we're not transparent at the city, but I just think that it's unnecessary use of our time and I'm not in favor of it.
I had the same thoughts last time, and that was with less information than we have now.
Right.
But the new information, I'm not sure why we need to be involved other than, because I don't know what his thesis is or what he's trying to prove or show, but I don't know why we have to be involved or I have to be involved. It's sort of I'm kind of in an age where having fewer entities, knowing where I am, who I am, what my phone number is, definitely what my cell phone number is. I'm in a cell phone thunderstorm now, or about once an hour for the last 2 weeks. It's the same scam deal, but they changed the name of the return call. So I've been turning it off, just ignoring it, and then eventually it'll go away. But it's just kind of, right now I want, my name at least, and whatnot, in fewer places. And I think I'm guessing that he wants us just so an entity, if he's looking at entities, cities, P&Z, Board of Investments, and I still don't know why he could do that. I mean, he could just, with keeping us out, if somebody wanted to participate, they could. I don't know why as a group we need to vote on it or get involved in it.
Okay.
That's just me again.
I'm just curious, do you have these questions? Have you looked these over? So, yeah, I think that the questions are skewed. I have input to meeting agendas. Meeting agendas reflect my input. The board sets the agenda. Someone besides the board sets the agenda, and then it asks if the city council accepts the recommendations of the board and it goes on and it's,
My concern is that you can just take data and twist it around any way you want, regardless of how you answer that. And
Yeah.
I have concerns about why and what the person's going to be doing with this information. I mean, obviously it's for their doctoral degree, but you can twist things around and interpret answers to every one of those questions differently, no matter how you answer them. And depending upon what position this person's taking, I think it could come back negatively on our city.
because we don't know what his conclusions are until he's
Exactly.
completed a thesis. And it may or may not be how we see the information moving, and we're not necessarily involved in knowing all parts of the process from
My
here to
thought
city
was if
council.
he wanted to do this, he doesn't need us, all he has to do is do an information request, pick out 6 or 8 cities around the country that have planning and zoning commissions, and just ask them for a 6-month period to turn over all of the approved minutes from the council meetings. And that will tell them, you can see, here's the recommendation. Now, here's what the councils did with it. A lot of what Richard's trying to get, he can get that information without dealing with us.
You can see the minutes online,
Mhm.
and the agenda's online.
But you're thinking logically now.
Well-
Remember, this is a new PhD student coming out of some university, and look no farther than what's happened with Harvard, and it's trickled down, so. Yeah, after looking into questions, I will concur with what I'm hearing already, I don't think worth our time.
Are you looking for a motion? Or
Yeah.
just end a discussion?
Well, unless somebody has something to add, I think a motion would be appropriate.
Make a motion to not take the survey?
Is there a second that we?
Second.
There's a motion and a second that we deny the request. Any further comments? None? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none?
Okay. Thank you, Commission.
Okay. Moving on, we're not having an executive session.
I don't know, some of our discussions already seem pretty executive. Just not a formal.
We're not staff. On current events.
Yeah, a few things. Chair, members of the commission, so Daniel Loftus is not with the city anymore. We thank him for his 2.5, 3 years of service. So he's moved on to other adventures in Arizona. I'll be your staff liaison for P and Z, and also some of you saw me last week for DRB and as well as Board of Adjustment, although we've only had one board meeting, I think, in about the last year, so I'll be your liaison. Litchfield Square moving ahead on construction. If you've been out and peeked through the construction fence, temporary construction fence, the sod has been starting to be set in Litchfield Square Park, so it looks like a park now. They started on Thursday. They thought they'd be done by Friday. There was a lot of weather. We had a big storm when we were in here last Thursday for DRB, so they thought that they would finish the sod installation today. I didn't have a chance to go out and look to see if they've laid all the sod, but so the park is starting to look like a park. And then bathroom building 1, which was approved by DRB a couple of years ago. That bathroom building will be under construction probably in the next couple of weeks. And then last week at DRB, I brought forward bathroom building number 2, which is a smaller building, also in Litchfield Square Park. DRB approved it. DRB had a few stipulations. They wanted a little bit more building articulation on the west elevation of that building. That particular building will be also constructed later this year, but we don't have a construction schedule, but you might see some vertical construction in the next 30 to 41 days on the bathroom building 1. So if you start to see some stem walls go up along Village Parkway between Desert Avenue and La Loma Avenue, that'll be the bathroom building. So it'll be good to see some vertical construction. If you've seen Village Parkway, south of the church at Litchfield, that road looks like it's pretty much done. It's not quite done, but they're finishing up some work south of the church. And then
With that road, what are they doing in the corridor on Old Litchfield? Because they've just dug it all up. You know, the center section with the trees, and
yeah,
it looks like they are taking what used to be a U-turn area away and planting it, or they're reconfiguring it. What?
good question. So the landscape median and Old Litchfield Road is going to be reconfigured. It'll be there was a median break at Village Parkway. That median break is going to be permanently closed. And there will be a continuous landscape median from basically the church, Fairway Drive south to Honeysuckle will be one continuous landscape median, and with no turning movements. So if it'll move traffic around a little bit differently in terms of some of the turning movements that people might want to make. So that's what you're seeing. Like today, if you will, that work started about 2 weeks ago.
So does that force a right-hand turn then?
It does, correct. So if you're eastbound, when Village Parkway opens later this year, when you're eastbound on Village Parkway, when you approach Old Litchfield Road, you're turning right or heading south, so. That'll force traffic south on Old Litchfield, and then if you want to swing around and head north, like up to Bird Lane, you'll make a U-turn at Honeysuckle. At Honeysuckle and Old Litchfield, there's a three-way stop sign that was implemented.
But there's gonna be permanent,
They will be permanent,
and they need the cops out.
yeah,
Like today, I ran my dog, my grand dog,
yeah,
and came up and stopped to make the U-turn back, like you were talking about,
right.
and just never even stopped, right through.
We'll keep an eye on that. So there's temporary stop signs today. There will be permanent markings and stop signs at that intersection. In fact, they're supposed to go in this week. So the three-way stop sign, the crosswalks there over to the Wigwam, the intersection's not quite done, but it's getting close.
Are they gonna have something that when a pedestrian wants to walk, it's gonna light up?
That question's been asked by mayor and council, and that is, we are looking at, I know there's varying opinions on the flashing stop signs, that's something that we are looking at.
Lot 3.
Lot 3 is for the audience and for the record. That's one of the northern lots. I don't have an exhibit that I could show you. I should have.
But that's the only one that's been sold.
That's been sold. We took that to DRB last November. DRB had originally approved the design plans for Lot 3, I believe in August of 2022, and then with some stipulations that the applicant come back with some further plans, details. So in November, I presented in front of DRB those plans. It was a paving plan because there was a lot of hardscape proposed on Lot 3. Building elevations were shown and landscape plans. So the actual construction plans that would lead up to a building permit are in our shop at City Hall for review. We're close to, our building official is close to being able to issue a building permit for that. We hope that the owner of Lot 3, Mike Firth, and his development team will eventually pull a building permit for that, for Lot 3.
To continue on that,
Yes.
where's all the construction equipment gonna go? Because we've got brand new roads. And the question is, are they going in the ground at all? Everything's just surface and just going up? You know, there's a lot of more questions than answers. And then the other question is, where is and I'm not sure exactly, is it just up to the council to decide whether they're going to sell the rest of the lots or keep the lots and lease them?
Through the chair, so the construction site is shrinking. So I think I've advised P and Z. We meet weekly with Aiken Gardner, they're our general contractor. There are, to get into the details of what they're experiencing on site, is the temporary construction fencing. It started out like this around the entire square. That's starting to shrink just because they're finishing the work. Village Parkway is pretty much done. There will be a new road west of City Hall called La Loma Avenue. That work is underway. If you go by City Hall, you can see the road bed has been cut. So Aiken Gardner is feeling that crunch. They are moving their equipment around. We've had to shift somewhere like their personnel when they show up at the job site early in the morning where they park. You'll start to see some different activity on different parts of the site. The construction trailer where we have our weekly meetings is actually going to move. It's in the middle of, it's on the south side of Honeysuckle. That is going to get shifted and moved. It'll still be on the site through Labor Day weekend probably, but it'll be move to make way for some of the hardscape on the south side of Honeysuckle. But you bring up a good point because the equipment has to go somewhere.
Well, I understand and their project, but their project ends in December or January, no, September or October.
Right.
And that contract and we're out of money.
Right.
I wanna know lot 3. They're gonna hire a contractor. And who's gonna verify what they're gonna do and how we're gonna maintain our brand new roads? Are they gonna come in on the backside, by Scout Park where that gravel is? And do all their excavating and everything that through the back door? I mean, I'm disappointed with how long it's taken with where Litchfield is standing now and how it all transpired, the cost overruns and all those things. And I don't have a lot of confidence in what I'm seeing and hearing moving forward. So, that's, you're running for the council. We need more people, new people on there to bring better ideas and stand up for what, we, the populace, want to do.
Okay, and with that, we're really not supposed to discuss when they do their staff presentation.
Oh.
So, and I'm pretty lenient, but I went
Yeah,
further than I
okay,
should.
well, that's fine.
So anyway, but there's nothing that says you can't go up to staff after the meeting and
Sure.
ask them to say.
Yeah, I have, but I feel,
There you go.
other people should be aware of what's going on. I mean, if we keep it real quiet, then all of a sudden, what are you guys trying to really do?
Well,
So,
the
thank you.
legislature has kind of roped us into the way we have to do things.
No, I understand.
So anyway, anything further, or we pretty much covered the staff?
Pretty much covered the staff report for
Okay.
tonight.
So moving on to commissioners' reports. Do any of the commissioners have a report on a current event? Look like they're ready, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
There a second? Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Pass.